Back, everyone. We are excited to continue diving into landowner decision making in today's lesson. Today, I'm going to walk you through some hypothetical case studies to practice applying these concepts. These case studies will really help us to better understand the risk and benefits of carbon offset programs. We are also going to go into a little more detail, understanding the different elements in signing a carbon contract. Our first case study is of Laura. She inherited a forest that was part of a larger farm and wanted to reinvest in the land through agritourism. The forest had been high graded in the past, so it was not worth much for timber. She found a program that paid her to restore the forest, but it required a long term contract. She received about $13 per acre each year, averaging $9 per acre over 20 years. That totaled around $10,360, but the present value, what it really worth today, was closer to $7,500. That number helped her compare this option with others, like investing in agritourism using a consistent value measure across different timelines. It's important to note this does not include cost. Cost she paid for a consultant to write a management plan and may have had other restoration expenses. So the example here focuses only on the payments, not the full economic picture. Now, here is a case study of David. He wanted to keep the forest as a family legacy, but also hoped to earn some income through harvesting. He was already actively managing the land, handling wildfire risk and invasive species, and also had experience with NRCS conservation programs. Still, he was a bit cautious about carbon programs. He found one carbon program with a short-term annual contract. He enrolled 180 acres at $21 per acre per year, assuming a 20-year period. That adds up to about $122,000, but the present value, what it is worth today, is closer to $55,000 or about $14 per acre annually. This gave him a clear sense of the land's value if he delayed harvest. Since he already had a certified management plan and was actively managing, there were no added cost, just the opportunity cost of waiting to harvest. And then finally, the Smiths. They had owned 130 acres for a long time and were focused on biodiversity, conservation, and forest restoration. They were already investing in things like deer fencing and creating early successional habitats for birds with some support from state and federal programs. Unlike others, they were comfortable with a long term contract. This was part of their legacy plan. They received some upfront payments for plant control, and their annual payments averaged about $18 per acre. Over time, that totaled around $65,000, but in today's dollar, it's closer to $31,000. They did have to pay a consultant for a management plan, so there were some costs. So now looking across all three landowners, you can see how their values, goals, and risk tolerance shaped their decisions. The total value they received depended on the size of their land, the contract length, and payment rates. And all of that plays into whether a carbon program is the right fit. We have an ongoing survey in Pennsylvania and Virginia that is looking at landowners' opinions. So far, some of the general findings are that forest owners are generally positive towards these carbon payment opportunities, but they do consider their other management objectives a higher priority. They do generally prefer the shorter contracts and programs that help support forest health. This indicates that delay in harvest is something that is meaningful to them. But the big benefit to the landowners is that they get multiple streams of revenue to accomplish other goals on their forest land. One factor to consider is the people being sampled here are more actively engaged in forest management already. Those are the folks answering the survey. They are much more likely to already have a management plan. Another key factor we saw in the study was peer approval and cultural values. Many landowners were motivated more by a sense of doing right by the land than by maximizing profit. That culture supports conservation and carbon management fits into that, though usually as a secondary goal. Landowners who felt confident in navigating contracts were more open to participating in carbon programs, but most lacked a clear understanding of the potential cost, especially how implementation might affect their management plans. So, there is a real need for support, starting with helping landowners ask the basic question: would carbon payment offer meaningful benefits? That takes time to explore, and even once they decide to move forward, doing the actual financial analysis is a separate, more technical step that many need help with. So, when we talk about carbon contracts, there are a few key things landowners need to understand. First, it's their responsibility to make sure any changes in management are intentional and represent a real shift from what they were already planning to do. This is what's called additionality. The carbon program is paying for something new, not business as usual. Owners should ask, is this a real change from my original plan? And is it something I can sustain over time? Also, they need to look at any existing commitments like conservation easements because that might already restrict harvesting, as that could conflict with carbon contract requirements, especially if the program is asking for a harvest delay. On the other hand, things like cost share programs typically don't interfere. That's why it's important to disclose any other obligations to the project developer upfront. Most won't be a problem, but they do need to be on the table. Financially, make sure any requested changes, like delaying harvest or improving the stand, still aligns with your broader goals for the land. If it does not fit your vision, it probably won't be sustainable in the long run. Carbon payments can vary a lot. Some programs offer a lump sum upfront for things like restoration, planting, or invasive species control, while others pay annually. In some cases, there is a payment after 5 years, once a stand inventory is done. But for most family forest programs, annual payments are the norm, with verification happening every 3 to 5 years. The key questions landowners need to ask are: when do I get paid and how much? Some prefer steady annual payments to cover costs like property taxes. Others like getting a lump sum upfront to fund immediate work. But it's also important to think about how carbon payments fit into your bigger financial picture. For example, if you have debt growing at a higher interest rate than your carbon payments are worth over time, it might make more sense to harvest now and pay off that debt. That's not always easy. Many owners want to keep their forest and meet financial goals, but sometimes the math points to a different decision. It's really important for landowners to understand the penalties and clauses in any carbon contract. Some contracts include what's called an intentional release. That's when a landowner knowingly walks away or harvests in violation of the agreement. That's a breach of contract. But some programs allow voluntary withdrawal every 5 or 6 years with fewer penalties. In those cases, you will usually need to repay any carbon payments you have received, but at least there is a pathway to exit if your situation changes. Then there is accidental release like carbon loss from fire, wildfire, storms, or other events outside your control. Contracts typically have exclusion clauses that define which risks are covered. That's because the project developer is responsible for making sure the carbon credit hold their value for the buyer, and they manage that through buffer and risk planning. Once your contract is done or the credits are paid for, your obligations usually end. But it's essential to read those clauses carefully and make sure the risk to your forest are addressed. It's also important to understand your options for contract renewal. Some programs offer automatic renewal, which can be helpful, especially for shorter contracts, but there are trade offs. One key issue is that you often can't easily switch between carbon programs or project developers. That's because each program calculates carbon credits differently, and overlapping method can create conflicts. If you try to enroll back to back in different programs, the second one might make you wait a certain period before you are eligible. So it's not really something you can shop around for over time. You need to carefully choose the program and project developer you want to work with from the start and commit to that path. In summary, net present values are useful for understanding how changes in your management could impact future revenues. This gives you the financial justification for your decisions, but personal values and non monetary benefits, like the importance of maintaining a legacy or biodiversity, are also key factors in deciding what works best for you and your land. Our research shows that early adopters are often more engaged in forest management and comfortable with investment risk, possibly because they are less concerned about potential losses. For them, delaying harvest might not be as big of an issue as it would be for others. The contract itself lays out the responsibilities of both forest owner and the project developer. It's a partnership to generate carbon credits, so make sure the term aligns with what you can realistically manage. And most importantly, don't enter any contract without consulting a legal professional. This is essential advice. Each contract and property is unique, and a legal expert can help you make the right call. We hope that these examples have been helpful for you today. As we wrap up, we have one reflection question for you to consider, and that is, how well does the carbon contract on offer help owners meet their forest management and personal finance goals? It is important to understand the specific needs of the landowners you will be working with. We hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you are watching this video on YouTube, we encourage you to check out our free online educator course. If you are taking the course, here are a few reminders for you. Make sure to complete the evaluation survey and comprehension check at the end of the module. We have optional activities and a question and answer forum on the classroom website for anyone who is interested as well. We will see you in the next video.